Good evening, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for coming. Tonight we're going to talk about integrated planning and water resources and infrastructure, but first our city manager, Ed Augustus, would like to open things up.
Thank you, Paul. First and foremost, I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. I know this is not always a topic that draws big crowds, but we've got quality, if not quantity, here tonight. So I want to thank all of you engaged citizens for being here tonight. I do want to acknowledge we have a couple of our city councilors here. We have City Councilor George Russell, who's here, City Councilor Matt Wally, who's here. I know Representative Mary Keefe is here. We want to thank all of them for being here and being part of this process. I also do want to acknowledge and thank Commissioner Musi, Assistant Commissioner Labovites, Phil Guerin, our Director of Water and Sewer, and all of the folks at DPW, a number of whom are here tonight. I can remember maybe a year ago, I went down to get a briefing from the team at DPW and all the folks that are working with them. And there was literally a conference table stacked too high with binders about this thick. That was the draft of the materials that they were putting together. So a phenomenal amount of research, information gathering, analysis has gone into getting us to this point, and there's a lot more to do to go from here forward. So it took a lot of hard work, a lot of professional folks working a lot of hours to kind of move this forward. And I think today really is about engaging you all, the citizens, the ratepayers, the people who care about the two things that we as a city government care about: protecting our environment and making sure this is an affordable place to live and to do business. Those two things cannot be at odds with each other. They have to be in harmony with each other. They have to be in sync with each other. And that's really what integrated planning is all about, is how do we do right by our environment, make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect the amazing natural resources that we have, but do it in a way that's affordable, so that a lot of folks here who are on fixed incomes and limited budgets can afford to live here and maintain themselves in their homes, and a lot of our large businesses and employers who rely on water and sewer rates to be affordable to continue to do business here and provide the jobs and the benefits to our community that they do. And so we're trying to strike that right balance, and we want you to be part of that. We don't want to deliver you the plan. We want to engage you in a discussion, in a dialogue, and what I think is somewhat unique, an interactive process later on tonight. We're going to ask you to actually kind of vote, and they'll talk a little bit more about that and help us figure out what the priorities should be. So this is really, I think, an interactive process, and one that we really look forward to your input and your expertise in. So I'm going to turn it back to the commissioner, but just really on behalf of the city of Worcester, thank you all for being here. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being engaged.
Thank you, City Manager Augustus. We certainly at DPW appreciate the administration's support in this plan and all the work that's gone into it to date. So today we're going to talk about integrated planning. So here's the agenda for tonight. We're going to talk about DPW responsibilities and goals, and it's really the cities. The DPW represents the city when it comes to environmental issues, when it comes to permitting. Those things are all, NIPD's permits and so forth, they're all addressed to the city. DPW is just the department that manages that. So we're going to talk about the utilities themselves, the water, the sewer, the drain system. That's what this is all about. The regulatory compliance, when Phil Guerin, our water and sewer director, finishes this, he'll talk a little bit about that. And an integrated plan, what is it and why do we need one? Well, I want to talk for a second about that. An integrated plan is something that came up, I think around 2012. It started being talked about nationally by EPA, and it was really in response to communities all over the country, mayors all over the country congressmen all over the country saying to EPA, what are you doing? You're crippling our communities with these permits, whether it be for stormwater or for sewage treatment plants or for combined sewer facilities. And we here at Worcester DPW, we used to say, well, we need to come up with a way of looking at all these things holistically instead of in the silos that were traditionally looked at. And essentially integrated plan was that holistic look that we kind of were asking for some time. And EPA came up with this concept, and they came up with a framework for how this could work. And we went to EPA as the city of Worcester and negotiated over some period of time, the opportunity to do this plan. So what an integrated plan is simply what city manager just said to you. We want to look at all our responsibilities. We want to look at the things we have to do. We want to look at the environment. We want to look at the ability to supply good, clean drinking water. We want reliable sewer systems and drainage systems. And we want to make sure that these things are interacting properly with the environment. And we need to do all that at a cost that this community can afford, and at a cost that the businesses can stay in Worcester and afford to do their business. And we also need to think about the expansion of business, that we need this infrastructure to not hinder the city of Worcester having the ability to let new businesses and new ventures in because of water and sewer needs. We don't want that to become a roadblock. So that's what it's about. The next steps here, we're going to talk about how it goes, how this plan is being put together and how it works. And then, as the manager said, we're going to talk about the interactive part of this in a few minutes. I'll let Phil probably get into that a little bit more. So I'm just going to give a little bit of a rundown on Worcester DPW and what DPW does. If you live, work, or own a business in Worcester, we say here, you rely on DPW. I mean, I think to some degree, most people think of DPW, they think of getting their street paved, they get their sidewalk fixed, they get the pothole repaired, they get the street side done, they get their streets plowed and sanded in the winter, we do the street sweeping in the spring that we're doing now. All very important functions, and some of them, like street sweeping, is really an environmental function. But I think people less think of DPW when it comes to water and sewer. They think of, they get up in the morning, turn the water on, and they use their sinks and toilets and showers, and everything works, and we're kind of forgotten about, and we're happy with that. We don't want people to think about us, because when they think about us is when they turn the water and nothing happens. But really, that's the part of DPW. It's really the biggest part of DPW when it comes to the cost of operating DPW and the number of employees. But that's the part we're going to talk about today, and how that affects the public health, how we can enhance the environment. And again, DPW is the one city department that interacts with the environment. And again, I've mentioned this already, how we can, preserve the growth that's going on in Worcester now, how we can keep supplying reliable, safe infrastructure in terms of water, sewer, drainage to new industries that may be looking at Worcester. And then we're going to get into some stats, just because we're engineers, we like to talk about stats. So the 184 residents and 13,000 businesses we provide, again, this reliable water. We transport and collect sewage, and we manage stormwater. This is something that I think a lot of people have trouble comprehending is really the magnitude of what we need to do. Worcester treats 8 billion gallons of drinking water a year at our filtration plant, okay? And we put this stat in to try to help people, visualize that. That's 1,547 football fields, 12 feet deep. I believe our 10 reservoirs only hold, at filled capacity, which they are now, 7 billion gallons. But we treat 8 billion gallons a year. So obviously the need for continued rainfall to keep filling those so we don't have droughts is important. And then we need to collect and treat the wastewater. It comes from that drinking water, and it gets treated at the Upper Blackstone facility, which is a regional facility, but Worcester is 85% of the flow and therefore 85% of the bills. So we'll see the financial breakdown in a second. So as part of Worcester's integrated plan is the Upper Blackstone Treatment Facility, because again, it's a big part of our cost, it's a big part of demands from EPA, and it needs to be considered when we look at that holistic picture of what you ratepayers have to pay on water and sewer and manage rainfall and snowfall, snow melt, and things that relate to flooding. We have the 10 reservoirs I just mentioned. We have 1,285 miles of pipe, or 6.8 million almost feet of pipe that we have to maintain and take care of. A lot of that goes back to pre-1900s. We have 41 water and sewer pump stations that need daily maintenance, and consume energy, and they're mechanical, and they all have certain useful lives, and they're always wearing out and going, so that's an operational cost. And it's really because of Worcester's on the 7 hills, so nothing works easy with gravity. And then we have the one filtration plant that treats the 8 billion gallons that we just talked about. And we have a combined sewer overflow treatment facility on Quincy Ave. Most people don't know what that weird-looking building is that's across from Crompton Park on Quincy Ave, but that's what it is. It's part of your sewer system. And then the 16,000 catch basins that, again, have an environmental impact. They help us separate grit and sand and trash from the receiving waters. So we maintain the water system, a third of which I just mentioned is pre-1900. So here's how the budget looks, and particularly the integrated plan is more focused on sewer drain infrastructure than it is water, because water is a priority that's going to come right off the top. We're not going to compromise the quality of the drinking water that we supply to our residents and businesses really for any other reason. So that will always be the priority. So where we have the ability to make decisions is more on the sewer drain treatment side. So if I look at this chart, 702, almost $703 million. That's the current city budget, including the enterprise divisions, which is water, sewer, and golf course. And the enterprise division is the one that is self-sufficient. They charge fees, they bring in money to pay their expenses. They're not really tax levy budgets like, say, the school department, or the police department or something. So out of that 702 million, sewers is 43.8 and water is 26.2 million. The golf course, which, by the way, will consume most of the budget discussions next week if history repeats itself, is 0.2% of the budget. DPW in general is 14% of the total city budget. Now, if we look at that water and sewer division on the right side, almost half of that, 46%, I realize this says 4.6, but it's actually 46% of that is our cost of treatment. So in terms of the in-city sewer infrastructure, the pipes and pump stations and treatment at Quincy, all that comes out of the other half. So half of what we collect from our residents and businesses is really just a pass-through to pay for treatment. And that treatment is obviously necessary, but it's a big part of the cost, and it's why I mentioned a moment ago how that would be included in this integrated plan. Okay, at this point, I'm going to have Phil Guerin, our Director of Water and Sewer, come up and finish this.
Thank you, Commissioner. And again, a welcome to all of you. Great to see so many smiling faces out there. So as the Commissioner spoke about the challenges we face with a series of what we call water systems, that includes wastewater, stormwater, and drinking water. These are large systems, they're complex, and in many respects they're very old systems. So that's a great challenge in itself. The other challenge that comes our way is through the regulatory compliance. Now, regulatory compliance is a challenge that we really don't control. It's something that is put upon the city to meet and to find ways to achieve. So in the world of regulatory compliance, we have permits. These are called the NPDES permits, the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permits. And we have permits for stormwater. We have permits for the combined sewer system. There's a discharge permit for the water filtration plant's backwash. Obviously, the Upper Blackstone has its own permit. And there's other regulations, policies, guidance that governs the wastewater collection system and the drinking water system. Now, these are enforced by EPA and DEP. The NPDES permits are all actually enforced by EPA Region 1. And just so you're clear, permits are not like a driver's license. You don't get a certificate that says, all right, go ahead, you can go run your system now. A permit can be 30 to 60 pages long with 300 pages of appendices of exquisite or excruciating detail, depending on your perspective, that describes what you have to do, how you have to do it, and when you have to do it by. So permits aren't an easy lift, no matter what the permit is for. And in our world here at DPW, we really have two buckets of things we deal with. We have the regulatory and the non-regulatory. Now, there's some overlap there. There are things we do for regulatory compliance that help us manage our systems better and improve our systems. And there are lots of things we do in the non-regulatory world that help achieve regulatory goals. But there's a lot of contradiction between the two also. In our world, historically, the way things have been, the regulatory to-do list is the must list. You have to do that stuff. While the non-regulatory becomes the, I wish I could do that list. It's the hope list, not the must list. So what that means is we're doing the must list, and we're not doing as much on that wish list, that hope list of things we should be doing. The financial reality of that are some massive increases in sewer rates over the last 14 to 15 years, almost 400% increase. And a lot of those increases, resulted in some great improvements at the Upper Blackstone, better treatment, improved water quality in the river. But the level of improvements that the environmental benefits you see from a lot of these permits now are diminishing while the costs continue to skyrocket. Cost to the city of Worcester for Upper Blackstone services to treat wastewater in 2004 was $2 million a year. It is now $20 million a year. That means there's less and less money to spend on that other bucket, that other list of things we really need to do, but we don't have the money to do it. So just the visual on those rate increases, you can see some moderate increases up through about 2004, and then the Upper Blackstone project took hold, and our rates have been escalating ever since. And at that rate of escalation, it's unsustainable financially for the people of Worcester. And again, it limits what we can do elsewhere. So that's the way things have been. With the integrated plan, we're creating a new approach, and one that has been endorsed. The integrated planning is endorsed by EPA, so we're not off doing our own thing here. We're following their framework. But the integrated plan approach is really about focusing on the most beneficial and cost-effective solutions. We have a limited pot of money to spend. There isn't money coming from the federal and state government in any meaningful amount that's paying for any of this. Worcester ratepayers are paying for it all. That's the businesses and the residents of Worcester. So we have a limited amount of money we have available. And we're going to spend that, we want to spend that through this plan in the most effective way possible. We're really talking about rebuilding a lot of infrastructure, and that's not something you're going to do in a 5-year permit term or even in a 20-year planning horizon. We're talking about a planning horizon that's 50 years or even more to get done everything we need to do. But we want to do that in a way that we can also maintain affordable rates so that people can still live in the city and that businesses will still want to locate their businesses in our city. The important thing to keep in mind for our integrated plan, though, is this is not a no-cost solution. We are going to be spending plenty of money implementing our integrated plan, but it's going to be over a much longer horizon. And what we spend it on, especially in the beginning, is going to be maybe a bit different than what we've been kind of forced to spend it on. But it's not like we're dodging costs altogether, or we'll never see another rate increase, or we'll see rates decrease. That is not what this is about. It's about controlling costs and keeping those rates affordable. The plan will help us maintain high-quality services. We provide these services of water, stormwater, wastewater services, critical services to the city, and we need to maintain those services. We're looking to address multiple demands and needs, and that's a key part of the plan, is can we do projects that help us in many different ways. We want to keep those rates at an affordable level. We want to protect water quality. We want to protect public health. We want to protect the quality of life of the residents and businesses. And we want to balance our environmental and our community needs and make sure we're benefiting all sides of the equation. And we certainly want to support economic growth. Economic growth, we're talking about businesses creating jobs that grow our ratepayer base, that grow our tax base, that help spread these costs. The more businesses, the more wealth we can get going in the city, the easier it's going to be to do even more. So without infrastructure, there's no growth, and without growth, we'll be even more dire straits of trying to accomplish anything. So the integrated plan will consider drinking water. We're not including drinking water, what we'll call projects, in the mix. We're not competing drinking water against wastewater. We're deciding drinking water, because it's a public health issue, public safety issue, it takes precedent. So drinking water issues are going to get done, but again, it's the same people paying for drinking water and wastewater, so the financial impacts have to be considered in the overall rate effects. We're, again, trying to prioritize the wastewater and stormwater needs to achieve multiple benefits. Control the cost and benefit the environment, residents, and businesses. It doesn't have to be a one-sided equation. Now, keep in mind, we're early in the plan development here. We're not here ready to roll out to you our list of projects we're going to start doing in a year or two. We're trying to develop the plan, and that starts with figuring out what our goals are and coming up with our priorities. So the goals we've identified is protect public health and safety, protect and improve Worcester's recreational waters, improve drainage and reduce flooding, maintain affordable rates while we do all this, and improve wastewater treatment at the Upper Blackstone. The next step, though, is what should our priorities, our community priorities be? And that's where we're going to call on you. Again, our goals help spend that limited financial resources responsibly and affordably. We've got that limited pot of money to spend. What priorities should we look at when we're deciding what to spend it on? We're not deciding which projects to spend it on tonight. That's going to come at a later time. But we're trying to decide if we've got the priorities right. So what we've done is identified 10 priorities, and they're displayed at the tables in the back of the room that you'll be getting to shortly. You all received your envelope of 10 red buttons. So at each table, there are 2 priorities described at each of the tables in the back of the room, and there'll be folks back there that can help explain what those issues are. So we want you to basically vote on what you think your priorities are by putting your 10 red buttons in. All go in one jar. If you think that priority is just so much greater than all the others, you can spread it across 10 different priorities and one button in each jar. It's all up to you. We're trying to get your feedback on if we've captured the right priorities and what order should those priorities be in. There's also opportunities to take an online survey or printed survey. We're looking to get feedback on your thoughts. We've had a great consulting team and all the key staff at DPW working. I think we work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the integrated plan, or so it seems that way, Mike. I think you work even more than that on it, so even your staff. It's been a big endeavor, and we're we're not at the finish line yet. We've got a long ways to go, a lot of work ahead of us. We want to make sure at this point in time that we're moving in the right direction. So we're going to be looking for you to take a look at the 10 priorities we have and cast your votes and let us know if you think we're going in the right direction. So next steps, this summer we're going to be starting to look at all of those different investments and projects that we need to look at. I mean, there's probably hundreds of them out there now, and as time goes on, it'll keep growing. We'll be finding, as we do investigations and studies, we'll find more and more that needs to be done. So over the summer, we'll be working on that list. So the projects we have will be, sort of rated and run through this priorities filter and other rating systems to tell us which ones are the greatest benefit and which ones should be up front on our list of things to do. In the fall, we'll have another public meeting, and I expect to see all of you here. But at that meeting, we'll talk about, what some of these project categories are. And then February 19, we're done with our plan, and we're handing it over to EPA to get their input on it, and then we'll go from there. And just one thing to note, we haven't been, since we've been working on this plan for a couple of years now, we haven't been sitting back doing nothing, waiting to get our plan done. We've actually got $45 million worth of infrastructure projects in the works within the city. The Upper Blackstone's got $25 million worth of further improvements underway right now. So we've got about $75 million or so of projects that are either nearing completion or in the middle of being developed or underway while we work on this plan. So we haven't taken a step back and decided we'll wait to see what the plan tells us. Lots of work that we've already identified that needs to be done. So next step, we do want to stay in touch. We want to see your input. We've got a great web page up on the city's website. We want to hear from you. We want your comments. You can follow us on social media if you do such things. This is about getting public input, so it's out there for you to weigh in and help us out. Next step is going to be for you to wander to the back of the room, take a look at the stations, get your red buttons out, and cast your votes, ask some questions. Open house stations. At Table 1, where the two priorities are reduce basement backups and reduce flooding. Table 2 priorities are protect environmental resources and regulatory compliance. Table 3, public health and safety and improve water quality. Table 4, environmental justice and support the local economy. And Table 5 is reduce infrastructure risk and reduce reactive O&M. So there you have it. Now it's your turn to go to work. Thank you.